Welcome back, everybody. Tonight we have a special edition of Holden's 11. I'd like to welcome the Senior Director and Buyer of MyComicShop.com, Mr. Steve Borock. Thanks for coming, Steve.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you as always.
Yeah, this is going to be terrific. We've got some really exciting stuff to show you guys. And this is, like I say, a special edition. We're going to have a collector's corner, and it's going to feature some of the amazing art, original comic art that is available over at mycomicshop.com. So, Steve, can you give us a quick synopsis of what we're going to see tonight?
Okay, I just grabbed some cool pieces that I thought people would like to see. It's kind of random, but mycomicshop.com was never a big player in the comic art market. And we're the largest retailer on the web. And so when I came on board, I was like, why aren't we doing original art? And they were like, well, we do some. And I was looking at the prices. I was like, we could do better. And so we're revamping the site to launch all of this art that you're going to see tonight, plus much, much more. Yeah. We're just waiting for the IT to be finished, so everything's just right. We don't want to launch and screw it up. Right.
Sure.
But it's been amazing. I've been in the hobby, a couple of days. And so when we were opening the art section, I spoke to a bunch of comic artists and a bunch of comic art collectors that I've known, and everybody was like, man, I guess at some point I did something to help them in their career or their, business. And they were like, yeah, man, you did so much for me. I'll just give you some pieces. It was really great when I went up to Stuart Sager, good friend of mine, great artist. I said, well, if you have, one or two pieces you're not really connected to, I'd love to, be able to get them for the site. And he said, Steve, I'm connected to every piece I draw. And I didn't know what to say, except I was about to say, cool, then don't worry about it. But before I could say that, he was like, but you've helped me so much, I'll find some pieces for you. Yeah. So I'll be getting some new pieces in from him this week. And it's been fantastic. People have been just so supportive, and they all tell me that they've been shopping on my comic shop forever.
Yeah, it's a great site and very well known. And first, I want to congratulate you, Steve. I think this is a perfect spot for you, and you've been sensational in just so many aspects of our hobby. And as you know, I love original comic art, and I want to say thanks for coming tonight. And really, these pieces that you brought are just amazing. I can't wait to show them to the viewers. So, without further delay, let's launch right in and see some of these babies, right?
Sure.
The first one I have to show to you here. This is Jungle Action 19 by Gil Kane. What a beautiful piece.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of only the 3 or 4 clan covers. Doug, when he wrote it, got in a lot of trouble. I mean, I think they weren't even selling it in the South. It was crazy. But a friend of mine had this piece, offered it to me, and I was like, yeah, we have to have this. This is, a marquee key piece. But it, Gil Kane, of course, is fantastic. I love Black Panther. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't?
I remember this when I was a kid, and I loved those clan covers. And I always loved Black Panther when I was a kid. It's, of course, being young, I didn't realize the social significance of the issues. Of course, we know that a little bit better now, but, still relevant today.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I grew up in New York, so it was pretty liberal there. And so we, when I read it, I did have quite a bit of background on what was going on. And it was really nice to read those stories and go, great, man, they're not just fighting villains, they're fighting social injustice.
Yeah, exactly.
And we all want to be heroes. That's why we love comics.
Yeah, and Black Panther always had an element. He was sort of grounded. He wasn't as fantastic. His powers, his skills, and his honing his physical being over the years. I always kind of dug that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved Black Panther since, FF52, but these days, of course, America knows who Black Panther is.
Yeah.
But in the 70s, when we were talking about Black Panther, people were like, what are you talking about?
Obscure then, a little more obscure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a fantastic piece, and thanks for showing it to us. I hope you guys.
Oh yeah, I've been getting emails about it like crazy. We're gonna show it off for the first time at the Heritage Summit this weekend. It's a very small thing. I think 1,000 attendees are invited and 13 vendors. It should be really great because I'll get to talk to all my friends and actually have time to spend with them, since it's only going to be 1,000 people in the room as opposed to 50,000.
Like at Baltimore.
Yes, Baltimore was amazing. I hadn't been on the convention floor except for OFCON, which was very small, in years, since before COVID. And I couldn't walk more than like 5 feet without getting stopped. I did not get to see everybody I wanted to see, like Earl Shaw, Dell Roberts, some of the artists. I just couldn't get through the whole show. We were so busy at my comic shop and running into all my old friends and people I've, done business with. But it made me realize what an amazing hobby we have, what great people. I'm so blessed to be in this for so long.
Yeah, it was great running into you.
Great.
That was one of the high points of it.
Oh, it was so great seeing you. It really was,
I'm excited to talk about this next piece. I love Captain America, and this one is by Butch Guice. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And almost any piece of Captain America art that features Nazis, you really can't go wrong with. And this is from the 1940s newspaper strip series. And man, what a striking piece.
Yeah, it is. To me, when I saw it, I knew we had to get it. I thought to myself, this is the best Red Skull Captain America cover to come out in years and years.
I mean this in the best way. It sort of has that classic Steranko feel to it, like
a little bit, yeah.
Layout
of the layout, right?
Yeah.
Right.
When I first saw it, I was like, wow, it kind of took my breath away. This was.
Yeah, but imagine if Steranko did it. Oh man.
I'm a huge Steranko fan too. Not to take away from Mr. Geis. This is a terrific piece.
Oh no, I love
it. A fantastic addition to any collector's art collection.
Oh yeah, I've gotten some calls about this as well. And once again, I was telling people we're not, launching until the IT's right and we have everything up. But I had to send some emails out saying, you asked about the price. Here's what we're going to price it at. We're bringing it to Heritage this weekend because I didn't want to screw anybody.
Right.
I didn't want anybody to think I lied to them. That's the worst thing in our hobby is lying. You just can't live it down. So yeah, I reached out to some people and they're like, well, I got to think about it because, everything's a lot of money. And I just sent the emails today saying, hey, I'm bringing it to the summit tomorrow set up. Too late.
Right.
It's fine. It'll go to a good home.
Yeah.
A dealer will buy it and make a lot of money. I don't know if I price it.
The right customer will find this one. This is one that when you see it, it just jumps right out at you. It's got the bold blacks. It's got the classic layout. I sent it.
And it's much better looking than the cover. The cover has all this like stuff going on in the background and it's cluttered. This is so clean and so cool.
I'll put on screen a comparison so the viewers can see that too. We can.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I certainly love that one. And, you mentioned, Steve, about the integrity of the art dealers. And I just want to make a quick comment. Man, I appreciate that a lot. For years, I've known Steve for years, for those of you that don't know, and I admire the way that you have conducted all the dealings with the utmost integrity. And it's something that can't be said for everyone, and you've managed to do that. And thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I love this hobby, and my father taught me. He was a good businessman. He said, your handshake is everything. He said, it doesn't matter what you put in writing.
Yeah.
He says, at the end of the day, he said that, people are going to trust your handshake. And, after years of being in this hobby, it's great. I mean, people will send me $100,000 or $200,000 worth of stuff without an agreement. and I look it over and I tell them what I think it's worth. And, we either do a deal or we do a consignment or we don't come to terms, and I send it back.
Yeah.
But it's incredible that people will trust certain people with that kind of money.
Really. And it takes a certain kind of person to develop that relationship. It's difficult to sustain high dollar relationships, I've always said.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think if you love the hobby enough and you're honest and you treat everybody the way you want to be treated, then I think you'll do okay. There's 10% of our hobby that, look, they're scammers, right? But 90% are great.
Yeah.
And that's hard to find, that kind of ratio.
It really is. And it's nice to see. I want to add to what you said that the original art collector is now sort of surging forward to the front of the line. I think that
Oh my God, the
art
prices
collection
are
has been
insane.
around for a while, but now it's really become a thing, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we're probably going to end up pricing that Black Panther cover at like $45,000.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It's from the 70s,
Yeah.
you know.
Right. Well, and I say that, and of course, I'm an old fossil now, so I can remember the days when you'd go to a convention and you could pick up these, pages for $100, $200 that now command thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So,
Oh, forget that. I mean, I remember going to a show, back in New York when I was a kid, and I was actually able to talk to Jack Kirby for like 15 minutes.
oh, I can't imagine.
I mean, he'd just sit and talk to you, and he had a stack of art, and you could buy a panel page for like $15 or $10. And I didn't buy any of it.
Yeah.
But the worst thing that ever happened in my transition from comic books to original art was way before I transitioned. Conrad Eschenberg was a very good friend of mine in New York, a dealer. He knew about the original art way ahead of time. He was buying up Ditko, Kirby,
Oh.
everything. And I was going to buy a World's Fair 1939 because I was a completist and I didn't have one. I had the blonde Superman in it, the early Sandman story.
Oh.
And he wanted $7,000 for something that was like a 6.5 or 7. And I was willing to pay it. I couldn't get a better copy. And this had great gloss and a beautiful spine. And he said, Steve, he said, I've got this splash page for $6,000 instead of 7. And I think you'll do better with it. And he showed me this splash page for Spider-Man 6 with the lizard. And I said, I don't know. I really wanted this book. And that book is probably worth what I paid for it today.
Right.
Where that splash page is worth $500,000.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? Yeah.
But that was back in, 82? That was a couple of days ago.
My story is not as impressive as that, but I was privileged to once meet Bernie Wrightson at a con, and
he was so nice, right?
What a sweetheart, right? And this is before he fell ill, and he actually took the time with my girlfriend and I, and we were looking through the pages, and of course I was already a fan, and I was like, wow, these are beautiful. Like, I was stunned by how beautiful the pages were, and I want to say at the time they might have been a couple of $100 each, maybe not even.
Right.
Which, of course, I was a young fella, so to me that was still a lot of money. But looking back,
absolutely,
I can't believe I passed. And I can look back on these moments and I'm like, what was I thinking? I was standing in front of Bernie Wrightson. But it's like you say, if only you knew then.
Well, nobody has a crystal ball in this hobby, right? So when I was a kid, I was setting up at the Phil Suling marketplaces and these dumpy basements of a dumpy hotel. And literally you could smell cigarettes and marijuana. It was crazy. But you could actually talk to every artist or writer that showed up. And a lot of them showed up not as a guest, but as a fan looking for books, which was cool. And I think the problem with the original art when we're young is that we're readers.
Right.
And so I was able to, sell my Howard the Duck #1s for $6 a piece back then, which was, crazy. And I was buying them for, 25 cents or whatever it was at the 7-Eleven in Belmore, New York. It was the only place that had them. I bought them all. And, but then I would go and buy Tales Spence 57. But back to what we were talking about, all the older guys were telling me I should be buying Westerns and Fawcett's, not Marvel. But everything changes generationally.
Yeah.
And, I didn't listen to them because I wanted to, have the first appearance of Hawkeye and read it.
Right.
I think I bought, what was called a near mint copy then. It was probably like, VF minus today or something, but I spent my, $12 on it.
Yeah.
Which was insane. That book is worth a fortune now.
Right. You make a great point. And as we mentioned earlier, I've done some work for auction houses myself, and we call it turning of the wheel. And specifically, as a matter of fact, I talked about this with our pal, Steve Ricketts.
I love Steve.
Yeah, he's the best, man. And
I wish him so much luck with his new comic.
Yeah, he's got a book live on Kickstarter right now, guys. That's called Ripped. And you can check that out. I'll put a link in there for you. But
it's really cool. I've seen the pages.
Have you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazingly, he wrote it, drew it, and lettered it himself.
And he has such a love for this hobby. It's one of the reasons I tapped him when we were first opening CBCS.
Yeah.
He is just such a good man.
Got a good
heart. Really is, and he loves our hobby.
And well, he was the one that mentioned that, as customers get older, they tend to start dying off, right? And that's the reason why you see the reduction in things like what he and I discussed, like Roy Rogers, Tarzan, and Buck Rogers.
Right.
And
right now, we still have at my comic shop plenty of buyers for that.
Yeah.
But when I was at Heritage, it was really hard to get any decent money for that kind of stuff.
You got to find the right buyer.
Yeah. I mean, luckily, Buddy Saunders, a legend in our hobby, has been doing this since, he opened stores up in the 70s, but he sold his first FF1 for 25 cents in '63. He more than doubled his money, it's incredible. We have probably the largest mailing list in the country. So it's not easy, but we sell Westerns and, stuff like that. And we just have the clients for it. And we also don't gouge. So like, let's say the Overstreet price guide says Tom Mix #2 is worth this much. And we'll say, I don't think people are paying that price. So we'll actually sell it for less. But then again, you look at the Overstreet on Hulkwood 81, we'll sell it for more.
Right.
Right. I mean, it really depends.
Got to gauge the market.
Oh, absolutely. And it's tough. Today I spent three hours pricing 30 pieces of art because there is no price guide. You have to really do the research and then use your gut. And so like if it's a Buscema page, but it's inked by Sinnott, it's worth more than if it's inked by Giacoya.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a strange part of the hobby where with the comics, it's about, the cover or the story and the grade. The grade, of course, doesn't matter on original art. I mean, if I ever found a more fun Spectre page from, the 40s, I wouldn't care if like a quarter of it was torn away. It's like, this is the Spectre. I mean, I used to own the Edgar Church copy of Morphin 52. That's how much I love it.
Wow.
Yeah, I paid $115,000 for that back in the day, which was the most ever paid cash for a comic that wasn't trade in cash. And on the way home, I was on the plane saying, I could have bought a house. I'm an idiot,
Well,
I had the bragging rights, right?
Speaking of John Buscema, let's take a look at this next piece. That's a Joe Sinnott piece too.
Cool.
Fantastic Four 304.
Oh yeah, it's great. Human Torch battles Quicksilver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
what a
this is
great page.
yeah, the you know, it's an action scene. You got a great close up on the torch, and you know, the action scenes they generally they perform better in the sales, right?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. I mean, if there was no action on this page, probably about half the price. If it was just a bunch of talking heads or something like that,
Yeah.
you know. But I mean, Buscema could really do amazing layouts. A really cool thing, if you don't mind me taking a sidebar, I was hanging out with Don Perlin, who I love. I helped him bring his collection of original art to market when I was with the Heritage as their senior consignment director. And he said that, he would sit in the bullpen and he would like erase a little bit and then finish it. But he looked over at Buscema and he saw they never erased anything. And so he asked him, like, hey, you never erase anything. And he said, well, they don't pay me to erase, they pay me to draw.
That's great. It's
I
funny.
thought that was great.
You look at some of these pages by the titans of the industry, which we look back now, and they're just really just the gods of the comic universe. And when you think about not erasing that, they did this in one shot, that
Yeah,
boggles the mind, particularly in an age where a lot of the stuff's done digitally now, and they're probably doing this 3, 4, 5, 6 times till they get it right.
and we're not sure how to price that stuff yet, right? Where it's pencils are digital and sent to the inker,
Right.
and then you have pencils over computer art, inks over computer art.
Yeah.
But that's the way it's going. I mean, it's so much easier for them to do it online.
Yeah, sure is.
So it's going to be a weird change, but it'll happen slowly and surely.
Well, and I'm sure that you guys at mycomicshop.com will be right at the forefront of this.
Yeah, I got a really cool piece coming in, not coming in, that we still haven't cataloged. It's Stuart Sager over Jim Lee Blue Lines.
Oh, wow.
It's Wonder Woman. So it's pretty cool.
I love both of them. So
I'm not sure how to price it, so I haven't cataloged it yet.
Well, we'll look to you for a little guidance on that one, Steve.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I'm the guy. Maybe Albert Moy or Scott Dunbier or
I still think
guys who've been around a little bit longer than me, in the art world.
I get it. Well, I'm excited to show this next piece, and this is one I asked you about off camera. This is the Negative Zone, I believe.
Oh yeah,
yeah. This is a John Byrne page, right?
Yeah, and, it's the first time
Fantastic Four 251. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that one?
Well, it's John Byrne pen and ink, so there's no other inker. It's from his great run on Fantastic Four, but it's the first time he drew the Negative Zone, which is really cool. So that's what makes this piece really special. I mean, there's so much going on in that page.
So much detail, right? And it's got the bold blacks and the inking. He just did a terrific job. It's striking.
Yeah, usually I don't like him inking himself. Ordway was phenomenal for him. Castle, Terry Austin, of course. But this page is done very well. It must have been a labor of love.
First of all, I love Fantastic Four, so this is easy for me to say, and I love original comic art. But this is one of those pages that you could hang it on your wall, and everybody would walk past it and go, "Wow, tell me a little bit about this." Definitely a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. It's really neat. I picked that up in Chicago on a comic buying deal, so I got lucky.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So without delay, I'll move into our next one here, which I'm pretty sure this is a Sienkiewicz page. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. But it's a New Mutant page.
Yep. And it's Sienkiewicz pencils and inks.
Oh, nice.
Which is really special.
Yeah.
Once again, worth some good scratch. Just had a gentleman from Belgium email me about it, wanting to know the price and stuff. And but we're taking it to the summit, and nobody's gotten back to me yet. And you snooze, you lose, right?
Right, right. This one's going to get snapped up.
Well, we'll see. You know, sometimes art sits for a while, no matter how great it is. Sometimes it flies. You know, I've had people, you know, where I've gotten in a cover when I was with Heritage, and I was like, yeah, it's a cool cover, you know. But then two people were like, that's the first X-Men book I ever bought. I have to have that cover. And the cover goes for like 50% more than market because the two guys are battling it out to get their first X-Men cover.
Right, right. We kind of mentioned that before when I was working for the auction house, which you get the right two buyers, and man,
Oh, that's all that counts.
right. Somebody sinks their teeth into it, they don't want to lose it.
Sure. I was talking to Jim Halpern when I was president of CGC, and I was buying some art out of his auction, a Heritage, of course. But I said to him, Jim, real sorry. I really tried to get those pieces, but you know, I just got outbid at the end. And he goes, we love you underbidders. You're the best.
Right, right.
And I thought that was so smart.
In a way.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Well, and I think we all know that feeling. You know, I'm a collector myself, as most of us
Right.
know, and I love original comic art. Now, not necessarily to the level of some of these stunners that we're seeing here tonight, but you know, I love to bid on the things, and there's nothing quite like that feeling of being in that battle the last couple of minutes, and you win that battle. It's a great feeling. It's a kind of high, really.
Right, and but it's the last 5 seconds that can kill you, and your heart sinks.
Yeah, yeah.
When you realize you just got outbid with no time left to bid again.
Yeah, well, it's fair to admit that I lose more than I win. So.
Oh no, me too. I think most people lose more than they win. I also do what I call tracking bids. So when the auctions first start, at Comic Link or Heritage, I will put in a $10 bid on a $20,000 piece.
Yeah.
So I watch it, and if it's nowhere near 20,000, then I'll throw my bid in towards the end. Yeah. But I still usually lose.
Yeah, and plus that way you get the alerts too, and you can kind of follow.
Yes, exactly.
A smart idea. So this next piece, I want to definitely hear your thoughts about this one. This is Nightwing, and that's actually the well, it's a cover, isn't it?
Yeah, the annual, right?
Yep.
It is you know, it's Batgirl and Robin, and it was during, you know, the whole thing where they had an on and off relationship, right. And you know, this is once again an iconic type cover, right? For the two, you know, of the two characters. Once again, I saw it and I said, yeah, we're gonna buy that.
Who's the artist on this one?
Oh, it's gonna take me a second. That was, I want to say Bennett, but I'm wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong.
This was one of the new pieces, so I didn't have it in the listing yet.
Yeah, and I don't
mind. I liked it so much I put it into.
No, it's Joe Bennett. I
Bennett.
I was right. You know,
know your art, Steve. You know your art.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's inked by somebody I didn't know. So when I pulled up the name, I had to make sure that I was, you know, right. But the inking is fantastic. I guess if somebody came into the hobby, you know, got some work and then went on to advertising or whatever, you know, which happens quite a bit.
It's definitely one of those you heard me mention before. I like the bold blacks, you know, and I like black lines. I know not everybody loves that, but that's something that I kind of dig. And I think it's really, it's just amazing on this cover.
Yeah, what's nice about this piece is that it has all the stats, but they're on plastic. So you can actually flip it over and see all the art.
Nice.
So you can have it with it, or you can, you know, fold it over and have it without it, however you like it. James Pasco, I think, did the work on that one. He's really good, very affordable, and what a nice guy.
You know him?
Oh yeah, for a few years, wow, not a few years, since CGC. Wow. But he was honing his craft back then. Now he's very good. I called one of the top people in comics and needed 2 stats replaced, and he was going to charge you $5,000. And I said, that's more than the piece is worth. I said to James, and he charged me like $50.
So let me ask you this question. When you're pricing these pieces, and like I say, in most cases, there's no guidelines necessarily to go by.
Well, I mean, there is. Like I said, it took me 3 hours to do the research on 30 pieces to come up with prices. Now, not that I got them 100% right. I'm sure I'm in the strike zone, but I was checking Comic Art Fans, Heritage, everybody's sites that were selling stuff, from Bashara to Berkey to Glenn, all these guys. And I said, okay, they're priced to sell, but probably at a discount, so maybe I should lower the price a little. And came up with that. But you had to use your gut a little bit.
That's what I wanted to ask you. When you have things that are a little bit of outside the guidelines, or even, like, as you and I both know, sometimes you'll have a page that'll far exceed what the initial assessment was.
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
First of all, you just use your gut to sort of instinctively price it, or?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's kind of like grading, right? When I was grading for CBCS or CGC, you'd get a book in your hand and you slot graded it. You kind of looked at it and said, looks about a 7. So you didn't have to start at 10 or at 2, right? And then you looked at it more and you realized it was a 6 or an 8 or whatever. Or maybe it was a 7. Once in a while, even a blind squirrel finds a nut. Right. But you use your gut after you do the research. Because sometimes the spread could be, let's say it's some of them are selling for 7,000, some are selling for 10, some for 7, 12. So you have to say, well, what was going on in these pages? What made it special? And is this one more like the 7,000, or is this one more like the 12,000?
Yeah.
And you kind of go by that. And, if you're holding on to a piece for 2 years, then maybe you priced it too high. And if you held on to it for 5 minutes, maybe you priced it too low.
Oh, sure. And, I can remember, I am a fan of graded books, and I love to grade books myself and sort of be the, well, maybe not necessarily amateur, because I was in the business a little bit.
Yeah.
But slightly more than amateur. But I can remember something that you taught me, and it stuck with me over the years. And you said something to the effect of, and of course I'm going to mess it up now, but it basically, well, grading is a science. It's probably 90% science, but 10% of it is art. And
I think I said 80% science and 20% art, because if you look like at Overstreet standards, let's say, it says definitively that you can't have a 1/4 inch crease in a specific grade. But if you really think about it, this is where the art comes in, and where desirability comes in. If you have a 1/4 inch crease on the front cover and it breaks color, or you have a 1/4 inch crease on the back cover of the same book in the same grade, and it doesn't break color and you can hardly see it, and 10 out of 10 people are going to pick the one with the crease on the back cover, then you can't say definitively that a 1/4 inch crease can't be in this grade.
Right.
Yeah. But Overstreet, Mark Haspel and I worked pretty closely with Gemstone and Diamond and Bob, and I think the second grading guide was probably one of the better ones. The first one, of course, was really good, but it was Gary Carter, who was so smart. I mean, he was such a hobbyist. But he had a 100-point system. And most people aren't as smart as Gary, right? And I would grade exactly the same way as, let's say, one of my best friends, Dan Kramer. I'd give it a VF plus. He said, I gave it a VF plus too. I said, what number did you give it? He said, 86. I said, I gave it an 87. It's a, it was too much minutia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why we switched to the, what they're calling the 10-point scale, but I think it's 28 grades from 0.1 all the way up to 10.
Right. And I have heard of the 100-point, but I really prefer I love the grading scale the way it is. And, I'm a fan. I think
it's simple.
Collectors have really taken to it. And it's something that over the years, the hobby's even strengthened, I think.
Oh, absolutely. We're in such a strong position in our hobby right now. Even with the recession that's going on, books are flying. I mean, Pam and I went shopping, and I don't know how the lower middle class and under are making it these days. I mean, we went to buy cleaning products, and instead of $6, it was $12. Yeah. It's nuts. The groceries, the head of lettuce was $4 and it was small. Yeah. But the comic books, which, I mean, it's a horrible shame what's going on, but the comic books and the comic art, even though there's a little bit of softening right now of late silver and bronze because it's so plentiful. I'm not talking about 9/8. I'm talking about, 9/0s or whatever.
I saw that this week. I saw a little bit of that.
Yeah. And I'm seeing it, every hour easily. People are offering me AF-15s and they're offering it for 20,000 less than they were 6 months ago.
Really?
But it'll come back.
Yeah.
We've seen this before in our hobby. I've, like I said, I've been doing this since I was a kid. I've watched where the prices have dipped a little or just gone flat, but then, the people with money who are buying it up, they hold it and boom, they go and sell it later.
So, well, the first thing is, what do you attribute that to, the temporary softening? The market conditions that people don't have the disposable income, or?
Well, I mean, it's kind of horrible to say, but COVID really helped us. People were stuck at home.
Yeah.
In front of their computers. Yep. They were getting extra money from the government. And so things went up very high, very fast over 2.5 years. Well, there always has to be a correction, whether you're in comic books or you're in antique furniture or you're in stock, especially. I mean, look at corrections in the stock market. It's wild, but it seems that our hobby has been recession proof throughout the years. I remember in the, I was at Sotheby's at the time, grading when the market crashed. So this had to be 94, was it? Or no, 98 when the market crashed, the stock market. But anyway, so Sotheby's had an incredible auction. It didn't matter, but I actually have a friend who just inherited $3 million worth of stock from his parents passing. Shame, of course, but he said he doesn't trust the stock market. He told his accountant he's going to buy comic books.
No kidding.
And so he's been calling me up and saying, what's coming in, and I want to turn the stocks into comics. He says his comics, which he's had for 40 years, have outperformed the stock market.
Yeah,
in most aspects. I mean, unless you bought Amazon early or whatever. Of course.
Yeah, there was a great write-up on MSN the other week, and it talked about the 3 overperforming categories, and they were all collectibles, and they were comic books, Silver Age comic books, muscle cars was in there for cars.
Yeah.
And I didn't read as much about this one, but apparently stamps have done very well.
Well, stamps were dead 30 years. Not 30, yeah, maybe 30 years. I know Heritage, well, I think PSA when NGC got into comics, PSA picked stamps.
Oh.
And Heritage opened a division for stamps, and Heritage makes markets. They're brilliant. I mean, Jim Halpern is not just the nicest guy and a great friend, but he is brilliant. Yeah. And they couldn't make it work. I was at a consignment directors meeting and they said, we're dropping the stamps. And because the median age of a stamp collector at that time was 69. And if you don't bring new blood into the hobby, it just doesn't go anywhere. You always have to bring in new blood. That's why I'm so interested in bringing new people into our hobby and teaching them and trying to keep them away from the pitfalls that I went through and that you probably went through. And you know, I mean, look, we learn and grow by our mistakes, but if we can stop them from making as many as we did, they'll have a better journey and enjoy the hobby more.
Yeah, that's the hope. And it does seem like, to me, the collectible comics industry is thriving. Like, it seems to me like it just increases every year. I would like to ask you, if you've given this at all any thought, what do you think is the next level of comic collecting? What do you think is going to be the next segment? We've seen this incredible growth for original comic art, and we've seen the Silver Age, and of course the Bronze Age is coming up fast. What do you think?
But now it's getting soft, the Bronze Age, because there's so much of it. Right. So the keys
it's not quite as rare, right? The Bronze Age books,
right. Of course not. I mean, you know, they were producing quite a bit. And at that point, people realized they were collectibles.
Right.
So people weren't throwing them out. Yeah. My grandmother threw out my father's books, which we didn't know about. We drove all the way from Merrick, Long Island to Brooklyn. It took about 45 minutes, felt like hours to me. We went down to the basement. We went to this room. There was his baseball glove, trophies, all this stuff that she put away. Couldn't find the comics. And he was telling me he had like Superman 1 and all this stuff. And he was like, Mom, where's the comics? She's like, oh, I gave those out to the neighborhood kids. I literally cried. I was like 12 years old, you know, and I was like, wait, I came all the way to Brooklyn, you know, and sat in this hot car, you know, and I was expecting the mother load, you know. But
what kind of books do you think he might have had in there?
He told me that he had Superman 1. When he saw the cover, he was like, yeah, I had that. He didn't say it at Detective 27, but that's okay, you know. So, you know, it was probably random Golden Age issues. He just happened to remember that, you know, iconic image, and he was like, yeah, you know, I had that.
That's hard.
He's the one who got me into comic books. He used to bring me home comic books from New York City to Long Island because he would stop before the train at the newsstand, and he would pick me up DCs or Archies. He didn't know anything about Marvels. So when I found Marvel as a kid, I was like, Dad, why didn't you bring these home? You know, look, this is the guy, the Vision, man. This guy is awesome. You know, it was so cool. And I became a Marvel zombie.
Yeah. It was Marvel that drew me into the hobby too. I've always loved the idea of the interconnected worlds and the Marvel, what we call it now. But it was so enthralling to me that, you know, you could be reading an issue of Spider-Man, let's say, and he could cross paths with Daredevil, or maybe the Thing was coming through. To me, that was right. So they knew each other, you know.
Exactly. And what's really cool was back then, you know, when in the 60s and 70s, you know, there would be these footnotes in a panel because they'd mention something and say, well, if you don't know what they're talking about, check out Avengers 44.
Right.
You know.
Sure.
It was very cool.
Classic books, man. Classic books.
Oh yeah. You know.
So, next, let's take a look at another John Byrne page. This is another Superman page here.
This early Superman Byrne.
This one's a beauty, man. This one's a beauty. I'll put it up on screen here for you guys to look at.
Yeah, that's I think Kessel is the inker.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, great, powerful images. Superman, wonderful facial images of Lois Lane. Byrne, you know, at that point, you know, Superman was, you know, basically not being used, and Byrne just turned it around.
Yeah.
And so this is a very, very coveted piece.
Yeah, I can see that ought to be a good seller. It's, you got
Yeah, I think it's from issue 6, I think.
what a gorgeous piece.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Steve, I saved one of these because you had told me an anecdote about this next piece of art, and I wanted to make sure that you could tell us a little bit about it. This is the Jim Lee piece for the Make
Oh, yeah.
Man, just take a look at this. Wow. But I thought the story behind it was fascinating, and I hope you could share a little bit of that with us.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating but sad, of course. Basically what happened was there was a kid who needed a very complicated transplant, and they weren't sure if it was going to work. Make-A-Wish Foundation came to him, or somebody came to them about him, and he was a comic book fanatic, and he created a superhero he called the Suit. And DC was nice enough to say, okay, we'll make a comic book. I think it was 350 to 400 comics. It fit into a box to ship to him that he could sell as a rare book, and to see his dream come true. And Jim Lee stepped up and did the cover. So at which convention was it? It was a Dallas convention. Jim Lee was in town. My friend and hobbyist and dealer, Dennis Barger, spoke to Jim. Jim gave him the cover to give the kid, and they need the money more to pay for medical expenses. So we're going to put this up, and all the money is going to go to the kid. We also have signed by Jim Lee issue of the Suit, one of only 350, 400 known, that we're going to also put up. We're not going to give it away with the art, because we want somebody else to get a chance to get something cool.
Right.
But yeah, what a wonderful story. And Dennis is a nice guy. He just wants to help his kid. We might not wait for the launch. If he needs the money sooner, we might put it up as like a one-off auction. Cool. And do some PR with that, and just to get him the money.
Well, yeah, please share with us how that goes. I'd love to follow that story. And
well, don't forget to sign up for my comic shop newsletter. It's once a week, and it tells you when everything's coming up. If you go to our site, just go to the bottom of the page and sign up for the newsletter. It's free.
I would love to do that. And just a reminder to the viewers, of course, if you love to see original comic art, don't forget to go to mycomicshop.com.
Right. We also have a comic art fans page. Bill Cox built that. Yeah, what a wonderful guy. And so if you go to comicartfans.com, then go to mycomicshop.com, you'll see all the art, not all the art, but we're putting up pieces every day that we'll be putting up on the site once the IT is ready.
Nice. Well, I'll look forward to that. And I'll tell you that I love the pieces that you've chosen to share with us here tonight. And this has been terrific. And I do have time here to do one more, if you don't mind, Steve.
Sure. Let's rock, man.
I'm a Kurt Schaffenberger fan.
It's a great piece.
Yeah. This last one is from Wiz Comics 134. Do I have that?
Mm-hmm. And it's 1951.
1951. And man, I just love this one. It's got the classic pose for Captain Marvel there, who they call Shazam a lot these days. But
right, because of the lawsuit. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we could chat about that a little bit too. There's been a lot of course, that was Fawcett Publications back then, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. So, absolutely.
Yeah, a little history there to be aware of. And of course, there was some back and forth between the name and the characters and this and that. Would you like to maybe just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Marvel, once the trademark expired, I don't know the exact terminology, right? I'm not in that kind of business, but they came out, of course, in Marvel's superheroes with Captain Marvel, right? Number 12. And then when DC wanted to got the rights in the 70s, was it 72 or 74? I'm getting old. I used to know this stuff. I bought like 20 issues, think it was the next Spider-Man one. Of course, it was worthless for years. But they wanted to use the Captain Marvel, and Marvel said nope. So they called him Captain Marvel in the book. They just couldn't put it in the title.
Oh.
So it was called Shazam.
Shazam, right.
Right. And I guess that DC at the end of the day, much later, decided to call him Shazam, just because they didn't want any confusion with Marvel's Captain Marvel, which
right. And
there was how many Captain Marvels in the Marvel universe? You know, you have Monica, you have Carol Danvers, you know, it's crazy. Yeah.
The legal issues that happened before, and they tend to drag on for decades in some cases.
Right.
It was very logical. I can see why they went with Shazam, but I guess to us, I guess he'll always be Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Speaking of which, incidentally, there was the situation came up again in the we sometimes talk about the character. Are you familiar with Miracle Man?
Oh, of course. I mean, my God, I actually brought the Miracle Man art to auction at Heritage, and I promised the gentleman that he could have the number 15 cover on the cover of the catalog. When I got back to Heritage, everybody in the comic division was like, what are you doing with this modern stuff? And why did you promise the cover? And why did you take a reserve on the cover? I was like, well, because we got all this great Miracle Man art at no reserve, and this cover is going to make reserve. And they gave me such hell. But everything sold. We made a fortune, went over the estimate. And then I brought the Seamus collection to Heritage. And once again, I promised them the cover, the Spider-Man one from 1990, cover for that, for the cover of the catalog. And I think they did like 2.2 million. It was incredible. But once again, Heritage was asking, why am I making promises on modern art?
You got to know the market.
Yeah, you know, use your gut again, you know. But,
well, that's a great story, Steve. And unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but I want.
Oh, that's a bummer, man. I'm having fun.
Yeah, I'm really digging this. And man, if you're up for it, I would love to kind of make a 2-part segment if you would be. So
well, let's see what your viewers have to say. If they don't like me, you know,
I think they will.
I don't want to bum them out.
And guys, I got to tell you, we only maybe got through just a little more than half of some of the amazing art that I wanted to show you guys.
Right. We didn't get to any of the comic books.
Right. And there's comics too. So
right.
I will just say for tonight, I will try. I promise I will try and rope Steve into coming back and doing a part 2 with me, because, you know,
I'll do it. Sure.
They've got more original art. They've got fantastic CGC books, just some really classic stuff. I think you guys are going to want to see it. And
yeah, and they people can follow me under Steve Borock on Instagram,
okay,
and Facebook, and I post new stuff that hits my desk all the time. Like we just got in a really beautiful copy of the first edition of the Overstreet price guide, but it came with the original mailer that Bob had handwritten. So it, you know, return address is Bob Overstreet. So it's worth even more than just the price guide. And so much stuff, you know, I love posting on Instagram, sharing it with the world, and on Facebook and stuff. So people can follow me there, but, you know, they can go to mycomicshop.com. They can always email me there. My phone number, my cell phone number, and my email is on the back of the price guide this year.
Nice.
So, will you know, anybody can get in touch with me if they have questions about art. I mean, I don't mind helping people. It's not about the money.
And
you know,
the links underneath of us here as we're talking. Steve, man, it was a pleasure to have you on here. This is a fun one.
Well, I'm very honored you had me on. You know, you're such a good friend. You know, you know, and that's what we need in this hobby. We need to help each other. So if I can help you with the podcast, you help me with the business, and we all help the hobbyists.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
It was a pleasure. On a personal note, I just want to say, Steve, thanks for joining us. It is always one of the high points at conventions when I run into you.
Same here, brother. You be good, man. And thank you again for having me. And I want to thank your audience for actually putting up with me.
It was great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. We'll look forward to seeing you here for part 2 of our interview with Steve Borock. See you soon.